Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to Fallout 3, where today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 explosives in Fallout 3. Now, I bet you're wondering how many explosives actually are in Fallout 3. And to answer that question, there's about 11. And a lot of these are the placed or the thrown version of it. So some of these are just going to be wrapped up into one because they are very similar, or they do basically the same job. And doing a top 10 list of this seems a little bit pointless, so a top 5 list seems like the best option. And this will be strictly weapons that count as explosive weapons, not weapons that can cause explosions like the Fat Man or the missile launcher, because neither of those in Fallout 3 count as explosive weapons. They are both big guns, which both of them actually appeared on the top 10 big gun list, so if you haven't seen that one, check that out. Let's start here with our number 5 pick, which is the pulse mines and the pulse grenades. This is pretty low on our list because pulse mines and pulse grenades are really only good against robots. Against people, they're basically useless. Against abominations, against animals, they don't do very much damage. They can cause limb damage, so they can still break limbs of animals or of people, which is kind of useful, but so can every other explosive, and these ones are a bit more expensive and a bit more rare. You really only want to save these for actually fighting the robots, and there's not a whole lot of those in Fallout 3, but in a few locations it can be pretty nice. Coming in our number 4 spot, we have probably our most practical explosives, which are the frag grenades and the frag mines. These ones are likely going to be your go-to options if you're going with an explosive build, or if you're going with a mixed build that involves explosives, largely because you find the most of these. Vendors tend to sell a lot of them, you can pick them up off the ground, you find them in boxes all over the place, and they're pretty good weapons. They actually do good damage, they have a good AoE. Mines are useful for laying down to blow up enemies' legs so that you can just walk backward and shoot them normally, or keep throwing explosives at them, whatever you'd like to do. Frag grenades are great for breaking up crowds, or for just kind of throwing at enemies that might be hiding behind stuff. Although that doesn't tend to happen too much in Fallout 3, but it is kind of useful when you do get in those positions where you can chuck these at enemies. Like I said, they're probably the most solid explosive in the game, and probably going to be the go-to explosive for most characters. After that, at number 3, we have the plasma mines and the plasma grenades. These are just upgraded versions of the frag mines and frag grenades. They do more damage, they're a little bit more spectacular when they go off, because you can actually see the big old green cloud there. They are more rare though, at least in the early and mid game. Towards the late game, you can find them more often because the Enclave tends to carry around quite a few of these. So picking up those from Enclave encampments or off of Enclave officers and soldiers, and they are just a straight upgrade from something like the frag grenades, even though you're more likely to be using those than these. Either way, they're here at our number 3 spot. Coming in at our number 2 spot, we have one of our unique grenades. This is the Nuca Grenade. Now you do have to make these from a workbench, or sometimes you can find them on workbenches, although they are fairly rare. The Nuca Grenade is a pretty spectacular explosive because it actually does the most damage out of any of the explosives, and it also can burn enemies and light them on fire. However, even though this is a fire weapon, it doesn't actually count as a fire weapon for the perk Pyromaniac, so you can't get more damage thanks to this. You could from something like Demo Expert, though, which all of these weapons actually benefit from. The major downside to making Nuca Grenades, though, is just simply one of the ingredients that you need. You need Nuka-Cola Quantums, and there is a limited amount of those throughout the game. You can get an unlimited amount if you go with the perk Quantum Chemist, though, which will allow you to create Nuka-Cola Quantums from regular Nuka-Colas. And you can at least buy those from vendors, which is pretty nice. This one is probably the most awkward of these explosives because I don't tend to use it very often, but it is a very strong explosive when you do get to use it, so that's why it's here at our number 2 spot. And then coming in at our number 1 spot for explosives, we have the Bottle Cap Mine. This is the highest damaging explosive. It's tied for the same amount of damage as the Nuca Grenade, although the Nuca Grenade technically does more because it has the damage over time thanks to the fire. They have the same initial explosive damage though. This one you can find all over the Wasteland. You can make these as well, and they do take very common material that you can find all throughout the Wasteland. You can also find these on workbenches way more often than you'll find something like Nuca Grenades. So carrying these around on even a non-explosive character can be really, really good. The damage that these things can do, especially if you stack them on top of one another, can be really devastating to basically every type of enemy. You can easily kill big things like rad scorpions. You can even harm things like the albino rad scorpions really easily. It's really good for Deathclaws. It's really good for super mutant overlords when you can actually walk them into these. Just like all explosives, you do kind of have to be careful. You don't want to be setting these off too close to you because the explosive does not care who it hits. But these are probably the best overall explosives, and they're the ones that I tend to hoard on my characters, especially going into like the very end game of Fallout 3 because you can just get the most value out of them. I don't feel like most people would argue that the bottle cap mines are the best explosive in Fallout 3, especially since you can make them, which is nice. Maybe with the exception of like frag grenades maybe being the best just because you can find the most of them. They're the most practical. Tell me your thoughts on the explosives in Fallout 3, all 11 of them if you would like. There's not very many, so thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.